The snow fell in thick layers across the Afghan mountain ridge. Each burst of wind carried tiny ice pieces that cut like sharp glass against bare skin. It was Christmas Eve at 11:47 at night. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees below zero, and with the wind, it felt like 30 below. SEAL Team Bravo gathered in the staging area, a quickly cleared spot of frozen ground near the forward operating base. Their breath made thick clouds that hung in the air between gusts of wind. The mission orders had been clear, given with a fast urgency that meant lives were at risk. A 6-man Marine scout team had stopped communicating 12 hours ago. Their last known location was deep in the Coast Province Mountains. Their final radio message had been broken up, filled with static and the clear sound of enemy gunfire. Intelligence reports suggested a planned attack by a well-trained enemy group. Time was very important. Every hour that passed made it less likely they would find the Marines alive. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Grove stood apart from his team, looking at a battle map that flapped in the wind even though rocks held it down. His face was worn and tired, lined with a kind of permanent exhaustion that comes from too many missions and too many choices where being wrong meant death. He checked his watch for the third time in as many minutes. Then he pressed his radio button. "Where's our extra person? We're wasting moonlight, and those Marines are running out of time." The distant thumping sound of helicopter blades grew louder, cutting through the howling wind. A Black Hawk helicopter appeared through the snowfall like a ghost ship coming out of fog. Its navigation lights were barely visible through the white chaos. The aircraft struggled against invisible air currents, tilting dangerously as sideways winds tried to slam it into the mountain. The pilot fought the wind with skill that came from years of combat flying, wrestling controls with both hands, bringing the aircraft down hard on the temporary landing pad in a controlled crash that sent up a huge wave of powdery snow. Ice crystals filled the air like tiny sharp pieces. The side door slid open before the landing skids had fully settled, and through the swirling white came a person that made every man in Bravo team look twice. Even through the storm, even in the darkness, there was something about this arrival that grabbed attention. She couldn't have been more than 120 pounds, soaking wet, young face with the kind of delicate features that suggested she'd just finished high school. But her eyes were different. Too calm, too steady. Like someone who'd already seen things and made peace with them. She wore standard winter combat gear that seemed slightly too big on her frame. But the TAC-338 rifle hanging across her back looked almost comically oversized. A small charm hung from her tactical vest, a hand-carved wooden angel. The kind of folk art you might find at a Christmas market. It seemed ridiculously delicate for a war zone. 19 years old. Chief Petty Officer Brett Sullivan was the first to break the shocked silence that had fallen over the team. "Seriously, Command sent us a girl for a dangerous rescue mission?" Laughter rippled through the 8-man team. Not mean exactly, but the kind of disbelieving amusement that comes from seeing something so strange it has to be some kind of office mistake. These were men who'd been through terrible times together. Fallujah, Kandahar, Helmand Province. They'd earned every scar, every gray hair, every sleepless night. And Command had sent them a teenage girl. "This isn't a video game, sweetheart," Petty Officer First Class Logan Brennan called out, his Texas accent heavy with sarcasm. "You got someone's permission slip signed? Your daddy know you're out past curfew." More laughter. Someone made a joke about bringing hair ties. Another asked if they needed to check her prom photos before takeoff. "This isn't a video game, sweetheart." Another SEAL called out, "You got someone's permission slip signed?" The young woman, her name tag reading Chambers in standard military block letters, said nothing. She simply moved to the equipment table with measured steps, the kind of economy of movement that suggested muscle memory rather than thinking about it. She laid out her rifle with practiced skill, and the laughter began to die as the team watched. Her fingers moved with complete confidence. Check the bolt, inspect the chamber, test the trigger pull, examine the scope mounts. Every movement was precise, methodical, the way a surgeon might prepare tools before a delicate operation. She checked the rifle's action 3 times, each motion identical. She tested the magazine release, verified the safety mechanism, ran her fingers along the barrel to detect any imperfections. It was a routine performed with devotion. "Christmas baby can't even talk," someone muttered, probably scared to death. But her hands weren't shaking, not even a tiny bit. And when she pulled out a cleaning cloth and began wiping down the rifles outside, removing every trace of moisture that might freeze and affect accuracy, several of the more experienced shooters in the team exchanged glances. That was old-school field knowledge, the kind of thing that separated beginners from professionals. Grove stepped forward, his boots crunching in the snow. He was frowning as he studied a tablet someone had handed him. "Chambers. Rachel Chambers." "Yes, sir." The voice was quiet, almost soft, but there was something underneath it. Not defiance, not bragging, just certainty. "Your orders show classified level 7 authorization. That's unusual for he caught himself. But everyone knew what he'd been about to say. "For a 19-year-old, sir." Chambers looked up, meeting the lieutenant commander's eyes directly. "No challenge, no apology, just fact. I understand the concern. I'm here because command believes I can help. That's all I need to know, sir." The team exchanged glances. Level 7 classification wasn't given lightly. It meant someone with stars on their collar had personally stepped in to put this girl on their mission. That meant influence. That meant connections. Or it meant skills so special that normal rules got ignored. Sullivan crossed his arms over his chest, his doubt playing on his weathered face. "Can you even carry that rifle for 5 kilometers through waist-deep snow?" "Yes, Chief." "Can you shoot it without the recoil knocking you on your behind?" "Yes, Chief." "How many confirmed kills you got, kid?" Chambers was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was even quieter. "None, Chief. This is my first deployment." The silence that followed was worse than the laughter. First deployment. No combat experience. And they were supposed to trust her with their lives on a dangerous rescue operation in some of the worst land and weather conditions imaginable. "Then let's move out." Grove made the call. "Bravo team, take off in 5. Chambers, you're Bravo 7. Stay close, keep up, and don't get anyone killed." As the team spread out to do final equipment checks, Grove pulled Sullivan aside, his voice low. "Her file. I made some calls before we left base. Pulled in some favors to get past the classification. And her father was Gunnery Sergeant Henry Chambers, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. You remember the name?" Sullivan's eyes widened. "The Montana Ghost. The guy who made that impossible shot in the Hindu Kush. That was her father. He died 7 years ago. Christmas Eve. Same area we're heading into." Grove glanced at the young woman who was now helping load equipment with quiet efficiency. The kid was raised on a ranch in Montana. Started shooting at 6. Her father trained her personally. When Chambers Sr. was killed, she kept training, kept learning. Qualified expert marksman at 12. Not in competition. In actual military standard testing. Her mother pulled strings to get her evaluated. Jesus. And her scores? Perfect. Every single test. Basic training, advanced marksmanship, scout sniper school, cold weather operations. Not just passing. Perfect. The instructors thought there was a paperwork error at first. No one scores perfect. Sullivan watched Chambers tighten down a strap with the practiced ease of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Then why is she still a lance corporal? Why isn't she promoted? Because the leaders didn't know what to do with her. A genius who could outshoot their instructors but couldn't legally drink. They kept her training others, running practice scenarios, building a reputation in secret circles. Grove paused. The mission orders mentioned equipment failure probability at 90% due to weather conditions. Total electronic optics collapse expected. Command specifically requested someone who could shoot mechanical, someone trained in pre-digital era techniques. There can't be many of those left. 5 in the entire U.S. military who still train pure mechanical in combat conditions. 4 of them are over 40. Can't handle the physical demands of this land. Grove met Sullivan's eyes. She's not our backup plan, Chief. She's the only plan. Sullivan whistled low, his breath fogging in the cold air. So, the kid's our secret weapon? She's our only weapon. If this storm keeps up and everything goes electronic dark, The helicopter ride-in was rough. The Black Hawk pilot, a warrant officer with 20 years of combat flying experience, fought the controls like he was wrestling a living thing. Wind shear caught the helicopter twice on approach, nearly slamming them into a cliff face that appeared suddenly through the white curtain of snow. The aircraft shuddered and bucked, altitude dropping in sickening drops. 30 seconds, the crew chief shouted over the rotor noise. The SEALs were already lined up, hands on ropes, ready for the fast rope descent. This was the worst kind of insertion. Hot zone probable, weather terrible, landing zone unverified. The kind of operation where people died before boots hit ground. Chambers was fourth in line behind 3 men who'd been through this dozens of times. She moved with them, matched their rhythm, and when the crew chief gave the signal, she was down the rope in 4 seconds flat. Perfect form, no hesitation. Boots hit snow and she was moving, rifle up, scanning her area like she'd been born doing it. The storm hit them immediately. Not just snow, but walls of white that reduced visibility to arm's length. Wind screamed to the mountains with physical force, pushing against them, trying to drive them backward. The cold was beyond brutal. It was actively trying to harm them, finding every gap in their gear, stealing heat with ruthless efficiency. Electronic optics are dead, someone shouted over the howl. I've got nothing. Same here. One by one, the reports came in. Night vision useless. Thermal imaging, blank screens showing nothing but static. Even the advanced combat optics that cost more than cars were reduced to expensive paperweights. The storm wasn't just weather. It was nature showing dominance over technology, reminding humans that for all their gadgets and gear, the mountains didn't care. Chambers. Grove had a shout be heard 3 feet away. You operational? She'd already switched to mechanical sights. Iron sights backed up by centuries of proven technology. No batteries, no electronics, just steel and physics and the human eye. Operational, sir. You're on point for Overwatch. Move. The next 2 hours were terrible. Not the dramatic, explosive terror of firefights and mortars. The grinding, exhausting struggle of fighting land and weather while knowing that somewhere out there Marines were dying or already dead. Every step was a battle. Snow was waist deep in places. The wind never stopped and visibility remained so poor that the team moved by compass direction and sheer stubborn will. Chambers moved with them, never complaining, never falling behind. The oversized rifle that looked ridiculous back at base now seemed perfectly natural on her shoulders. She scanned constantly, mechanical sights sweeping arcs that covered their advance. Contact. Brennan's voice crackled over the radio. Muzzle flashes. 11 o'clock. Approximately 600 meters. I can't see, someone else responded. Negative visual. Another confirmed. But Chambers had already dropped into a shooting position, the rifle steady against her shoulder. Through the storm, through the chaos of wind and snow, she was tracking something none of the others could see. Her breathing slowed on purpose. Each exhale measured and controlled. She was reading the wind in ways that seemed impossible, watching how snow moved through the air, how it swirled and spun around rocks, calculating wind speed and direction from patterns invisible to untrained eyes. Her body became absolutely still, the rifle an extension of her arms. Her eye aligned perfectly with the mechanical sights. In that moment, she wasn't a 19-year-old girl anymore. She was something older, something timeless. A predator calculating distance and trajectory with instincts shaped across thousands of hours of practice. Her finger touched the trigger with the lightest pressure imaginable. Hold fire, Grove ordered. Chambers, can you confirm targets? 4 hostiles. Elevated position. They have someone pinned down in the ravine below them. Her voice was absolutely calm, like she was describing the weather. Permission to engage, sir. You can't possibly, Sullivan started. The rifle spoke once. The sound was swallowed by wind and distance. 7 seconds later, faint through the storm, they heard shouting. Confused, alarmed. 1 down. Chambers reported, already tracking her next target, adjusting for wind. The rifle fired again, then again. 3 shots in 15 seconds, each one deliberate, each one followed by more distant shouting that grew progressively more panicked. What the hell? Sullivan was staring through his blank optics, as if he could force them to work through sheer willpower. How are you? For down, Chambers reported. Threat neutralized. Someone should check on whoever they had pinned. The team advanced, moving with renewed urgency through the white nightmare. In the ravine, they found 3 Marines. Wounded, half-frozen, barely conscious, but alive. They'd been separated from their main unit, ambushed, and had spent the last 6 hours fighting for their lives against an enemy they could barely see. Thank God. One of them gasped through cracked lips. Thank God. We heard shots. Thought we were finished. Where's the rest of your team? Grove demanded. 2 kilometers north. Ridge position. They were hit harder. Radio's been dead for hours. Don't know if anyone's. He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. The team moved out again, this time with renewed desperation. The storm, if anything, was getting worse. Temperature dropping, wind increasing. Conditions that should have made any operation impossible. But somewhere ahead, Marines were dying, and that meant you moved. You always moved. They found them at 2:14 in the morning. 3 Marines dead, 3 more wounded, but holding a defensive position against an enemy force that had them surrounded. The firefight had been going on for over an hour, both sides firing blind into the storm, hoping to get lucky. Chambers, Grove said, and that was all he needed to say. She moved into position on a small rise that gave her a sliver of visibility through the chaos. The mechanical sights were primitive compared to the electronic gear the rest of the team carried. But in this storm, primitive was the only thing that worked. She could see shapes, movement, the faint impression of human forms against snow and rock. I count 12 hostiles, she reported. They're trying to close the ring. 5 minutes, and they'll have the Marines completely surrounded. Can you stop them? She didn't answer with words. The rifle began to speak instead. 1 shot, 2, 3. Each one measured, each one precise. She wasn't just shooting. She was doing mathematics at deadly speeds. Wind drift calculated from the feel of air against her face. Bullet drop compensated automatically through years of muscle memory. Air density adjusted for altitude and temperature. Range estimated from subtle visual clues that most people would never notice. Every variable that could affect a bullet's flight path, calculated by instinct, corrected automatically, applied perfectly. Between shots, she worked the bolt with smooth efficiency, ejecting spent shell casings and loading fresh rounds without ever taking her eye from sights. Her breathing remained controlled, each shot timed to the natural pause between heartbeats. This was shooting raised to an art form, technique refined through countless repetitions until it became something close to supernatural. The enemy fighters never understood what was killing them. One moment they were advancing, confident in their numbers and the storm's protection. The next, men were falling. No warning, no visible enemy, just death arriving silently through the white curtain. Fair and unstoppable. Jesus Christ, Sullivan whispered, watching through his useless optics as the distant figures dropped one by one. She's not human. She can't be human. But she was human. Utterly, completely human. A 19-year-old girl who'd been trained by a father who loved her enough to teach her terrible things. Who'd spent frozen Montana mornings learning to read wind in the bend of grass stalks. Who'd memorized bullet tables before she memorized multiplication tables. Who'd made peace with violence as a necessary burden rather than a source of pride. The firefight lasted 7 more minutes. When it ended, 12 enemy fighters were dead, and the Marines were secure. The team moved in for extraction, working quickly to treat wounds and prepare for pickup. The storm was still raging, still trying to kill them all. But now they had a chance. How? One of the rescue Marines asked, staring at Chambers as if she'd appeared from nowhere. How did you see them? I couldn't see 10 feet in front of my face. She was cleaning her rifle again, removing snow and moisture with careful attention. Practice, she said simply. And my father was a good teacher. The extraction was barely controlled chaos. 2 Black Hawks fighting through the storm, loading wounded, counting heads, racing against weather that was actively trying to kill them all. But they made it. Everyone made it. Not just alive, but mission complete. 12 Marines saved, 16 enemies eliminated, 0 friendly casualties beyond what had happened before Bravo team arrived. Back at base, as the storm finally began to ease and the adrenaline wore off, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. In the operations center, officers crowded around mission footage, watching helmet camera recordings that showed exactly nothing, just white static and blur. The only evidence of what actually happened was the body count and the impossible after-action report. She made 10 shots, the base commander said, reading the report for the third time as if the words might change. 10 shots, extreme range, 0 visibility, 45 seconds total engagement time, 10 confirmed kills. 14, Grove corrected quietly. She made 4 more shots earlier in the operation. Different engagement, same conditions. The commander looked up sharply. 14 kills. First combat deployment. 19 years old. He paused. And female. With respect, sir, the last part doesn't matter. What matters is she saved 12 lives tonight. She did what no one else could do because she was trained in methods everyone else forgot. Grove met the older man's eyes. My team mocked her when she arrived, called her Christmas baby, made jokes about permission slips. Now they won't shut up about her. They're already arguing about who gets to buy her first drink when she's legal. Where is she now? Equipment maintenance. She spent the last 40 minutes cleaning her rifle again. The commander shook his head slowly. I've been in the military for 26 years. I've seen geniuses. I've seen natural-born killers. I've seen warriors who seem touched by something beyond normal human capability. He tapped the report. But I've never seen anything like this. Neither had anyone else. In the barracks, word was spreading at the speed of rumor. The teenage girl who'd shot like a ghost, who'd killed 14 men in conditions that made shooting impossible, who'd saved an entire rescue operation with mechanical sights, and a rifle that belonged in a museum. Sullivan found her in the armory, still working on that rifle, even though it was already cleaner than surgical equipment. You planning to polish that thing down to nothing? Just making sure it's ready, Chief. She didn't look up, hands still moving with practiced efficiency. Ready for what? We're back at base. Mission's over. For the next mission? Now she did look up, and Sullivan saw something in her eyes that made him understand. She wasn't cleaning the rifle because it was dirty. She was cleaning it because that's what you did, because weapons required care, because maintenance was how you honor the tools that kept you alive. Listen, he said, sitting down across from her, about the jokes earlier, the permission slip thing. It's fine, Chief. No, it's not fine. We judged you, mocked you, and you just quietly went about proving us wrong in the most spectacular way possible. He shook his head. That's not fine. That's extraordinary. And I owe you an apology. She set down the cleaning cloth, met his eyes directly. You don't owe me anything, Chief. You're warriors. You've earned the right to be doubtful. I hadn't earned anything yet. Tonight I earned something. That's how it's supposed to work. Earn something. Sullivan laughed, a sound of disbelief and respect mixed together. Kid, you earn a legend. You know what they're already calling you? The Storm Ghost. Because you shot through a blizzard like it wasn't even there. I don't need a name. I just need to do my job. Too late. You've got one whether you want it or not. He stood, stretched, felt his back pop. Your father, the Montana Ghost. He taught you all this. Yes, Chief. Every morning before school. Every weekend. Every summer. He said that technology makes war easier, but it also makes warriors dependent. He wanted me to know the old ways, the fundamental ways, just in case. Just in case a storm came. Just in case a storm came, she agreed. Sullivan left her to her maintenance, walking back to the operations center, where the debriefing was still ongoing. Grove was there, along with half the base's senior officers. They all turned when he entered. The kid's fine, Sullivan reported, cleaning her rifle for the 5th time, still calm as glass. How? Someone asked. How is she not shaking? How is she not crying or freaking out or showing any sign of what she just did? Because her father taught her that shooting is easy, Sullivan said, remembering Chambers' quiet voice in the armory. Living with it is hard, but someone has to stand in the storm. The room fell silent. Outside, dawn was beginning to break through the last remains of blizzard. Christmas morning. The base was stirring to life. People moving about their duties, unaware that during the night, something remarkable had happened in these mountains. Grove made a decision. Sullivan gathered the team. Full group. We're doing something. 20 minutes later, Bravo team assembled in the barracks. Chambers was called in, still looking uncertain, still young enough that authority made her nervous. The 8 men who'd mocked her less than 12 hours ago now stood at attention, faces serious. Grove stepped forward, holding something small. A patch. The Bravo team patch that each member wore, earned through blood and sweat and years of proving themselves worthy. Chambers, he said formally, last night, you demonstrated skills and courage under conditions that would break most operators. You saved 12 lives. You completed an impossible mission. You proved that age, gender, and experience are less important than training, dedication, and heart. He held out the patch. On behalf of Bravo team, it would be our honor to have you join us permanently, if you'll have us. She stared at the patch, at these warriors who'd gone from mocking to respecting her in the space of one mission. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out, the first sign of anything less than perfect control anyone had seen. You're not extra help, Grove continued. You're not temporary. You're one of us. Chambers took the patch with shaking hands, composure finally cracking, eyes shining. Thank you. Your father will be proud, Grove added quietly. She looked at the patch, at these men who'd accepted her. He knew, before he died, he knew I'd end up here. He made me promise something. What's that? Never shoot angry. Never for revenge. Only to protect. Only to save. She smiled, small and sad. He said the best snipers never want to pull the trigger, but do it anyway because someone has to. You're going to make a heck of a SEAL, Sullivan said. I'm a Marine, Chief. Details. Sullivan grinned. We'll work on it. Later, after debriefs and paperwork and medical checks, Chambers found herself on the barracks roof. The storm had passed. Stars filled the sky with brilliant clarity. Somewhere far away, families were opening presents. Children were laughing. People were celebrating life and warmth and safety they'd never truly understand. She pulled out the wooden angel her mother had given her before her deployment, touched it to her lips, whispered a prayer for her father, for the men she'd killed tonight. Yes, killed, because she refused to hide behind softer words. For the men she'd saved, for the weight of it all pressing down on her 19-year-old shoulders. A sound behind her. Grove had followed, boots quiet on the concrete. The lieutenant commander said nothing at first, just stood beside her, looking at the same stars that had watched over countless warriors across countless centuries. Finally, you just stay in? Keep doing this. Chambers thought about it, really thought. Someone has to be the one in the storm, the one who can shoot when everyone else is blind, the one who learned the old ways when everyone else was learning the new ones. She looked at Grove. Might as well be me, sir. It's a hard life. Yes, sir. Lonely. Yes, sir. But necessary. Yes, sir. Grove nodded slowly. Well, if you're going to do it with us. Bravo team. I'm putting in the paperwork for a permanent transfer. If you want it, I want it, sir. They shook hands. Below them, the base was settling into sleep. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new threats, new mountains to climb and enemies to face. But tonight, on this Christmas Eve, a 19-year-old sniper had become something more than her age suggested. Not because she was the youngest, not simply because she made impossible shots, but because when everything failed, technology, visibility, hope itself, she trusted in something older than modern warfare. In training passed from father to daughter across years of frozen mornings and patient instruction, in skills shaped through brutal Montana winters, in the simple Terrible truth that sometimes one person with one rifle can change everything. Sullivan found them both later, carrying 3 cups of terrible military coffee in paper cups that steamed in the cold air. Merry Christmas, everyone. They raised their cups in silent toast. In the distance, someone had set up a small speaker. Carols played, tiny and faint, but unmistakable. Silent night, holy night. All is calm. All is bright. You know what the kid said earlier? Sullivan asked, staring into his coffee. When we were on the ridge and I asked if she could shoot, "What's that, Chief?" She said, "Yes, Chief." Not, "I think so," or "I'll try." Just yes, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sullivan shook his head in wonder. That's not confidence, sir. That's certainty. That's someone who knows exactly who they are and what they can do. Grove looked at Chambers, who was staring at the stars with that same calm expression. Still just 19, still young-faced. But underneath, something shaped by fire and loss and love. Something that would carry her through whatever came next. "She's going to be the best," Grove said quietly. "Give her 5 years. 10 maybe. She'll be the one they tell stories about in every sniper school. 5 years. Sullivan laughed, a sound without humor. "Sir, they're already telling stories. Tonight became a legend before we even landed back here. I've had 3 different units ask me if it's true. If a girl really cleared an entire valley with mechanical sights in a blizzard. And it was true. Already, word was spreading through the base like wildfire, through the command structure, through the informal networks of warriors who traded tales like currency about the girl who couldn't possibly exist, who shot like a ghost given flesh, who saved 12 lives on Christmas Eve with 14 bullets and perfect violence. They didn't know her name yet, most of them, but they would. Rachel Chambers, 19 years old, daughter of a legend, sister to SEALs, the sniper who proved that technology fails, but training endures. That age is just a number written on paper. That sometimes the youngest among us carries the weight of forever on shoulders barely broad enough to bear it. Years later, when people asked about that night, and they always asked, Chambers would smile that small, sad smile. She'd touch the wooden angel, and she'd say what her father taught her on those frozen Montana mornings. Shooting is easy. Any fool with a rifle can kill. Living with it is hard, but someone has to stand in the storm. Might as well be us. And that was the real lesson of Christmas Eve. Not about shots or kills or tactics. About young people who become old before their time. Who sacrifice so others can sleep safely. Who carry darkness so the world can have light. 19, seriously? Yes, seriously. Because age has nothing to do with courage. Nothing to do with skill. Nothing to do with standing between the innocent and the threat. Between chaos and order. Between the storm and the people you love. That night, on a frozen mountain, a teenage sniper proved what warriors have always known. It's not the years in your life. It's the life in your years. And Rachel Chambers' years would be lived in service. In sacrifice. One shot. One life. One mission at a time. Merry Christmas. And may God have mercy on her enemies. Because Rachel Chambers wouldn't.